I'd like to bring to order the regular meeting of the Tiverton Town Council of March 23rd. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mrs. Mello.
Councilor Souza.
Present.
Councilor Perry.
Present.
Councilor Mello.
Present.
Councilor Lambert.
Present.
Councilor DiMederos.
Present.
Councilor Shabbat. Present. Councilor Pelletier is absent.
Before I start, I'd like to introduce the law offices of Anthony DeSisto and his associates are here this evening. Anthony was appointed as the town solicitor a week ago Wednesday. Anthony has 30 years' experience with an emphasis in Rhode Island municipal law. He is the town solicitor for Warren for 17 years, Lincoln for 8 years. He served special counsel to Bristol, West Warwick, Little Compton, Pawtucket, Providence, and Cranston, and now he's serving Tiverton. Stephanie served as a Rhode Island Supreme Court law clerk and has a decade of experience in municipal law. She, prior to joining the DeSisto Law Firm, she served in the City of Providence Solicitor's Office, served as Deputy Chief of Staff in Providence Mayor's Office, and served as Chief of Staff in the Providence Public School Department. Also in the audience is Peter, and I'm going to mess up this name, Schwartz. No, Schwartz. He's been with DeSisto in law since 2012. His focus is on municipal planning, zoning, criminal prosecution, and other various aspects of legal representation. I'd like to welcome them to Tiverton. I would also at this time like to thank Attorney Tights for his service to Tiverton. I'd like to wish him luck on his future endeavors and thank him for everything he's done for us. Look what I did. Consent agenda. Approval of executive session. Meeting minutes, March 9th, 2015. Approval of special town council meeting executive minutes, February 28th, 2015. Approval of regular town council minute meetings, February 23rd, 2015. Receipt of minutes from the following boards and commissions. Personnel Board 5, Prevention Coalition, Historical Preservation Advisory Board. 2. Correspondence received and filed. North Kingston Town Council resolution opposing House Bill H5473. Jamestown Council resolution opposing bills H5044, H5173, and S559. Jamestown Town Council resolution opposing bill H5257. Rydam project priority list request for project state fiscal year 2016, referred to town administrator. Tiverton School Committee joint resolution, town use of attorney Stephen N. Robinson. Department Housing and Urban Development to Tiverton Housing Authority regarding completion of action and financial management review. Town Treasurer Denise Surratt, distribution of February 2015 budget and revenue reports. Town Treasurer, distribution of management letter related to financial audit year ending June 30th, 14. Town Administrator, Fire Department overtime report for February 2015. Approval of National Library Week proclamation. Would anyone like to take anything off the consent agenda?
Madam President, I'd like to take off CA4 for further discussions at another meeting. I think that needs some time. We're in our 8th month of that budget, and I'd just like to go over it with the town administrator to see where we are and where you think we'll be at the end of the year. Some departments I know will make it, and other departments, I'd just like to take a quick look at that at some time.
Anything else?
CA 5, town treasurers.
Anything else? I would like to take out, I would like to take off CA 3A, CA 3C, CA 4, and CA 6.
I would like CA 3B as well.
CA 3A, the North Kingston Town Council resolution opposing House Bill H 5473. I'd like to refer that to our Labor Council to see if something that we'd like to report also.
3A?
3A.
What, I'm sorry, that to labor?
Oh, wait a minute, let me look at that one.
That's taxation on partially completed developments.
No, that's not the one, I'm very sorry.
I'm sorry, that's 3B.
3A is, 3A is the resolution, supporting the fire department.
Legislation pending before the General Assembly to overturn the Rhode Island Supreme Court case upholding North Kingstown's right to set the schedule for the fire department.
And I want to see if this is something we'd like to support also, and refer to the Labor Council to see what they think.
Yeah, sorry about that, I was
Okay.
reading.
Oh, that's okay.
It was in the bottom of my pile.
And I'll just do mine, Brett, and then I'll go back to you. 3AC, or A3C. That is the one that Bruce Cox was talking to us about the other night, about the mooring fees. I'd like to refer that to the Harbor Commission for review and see if they would like us to support this also. And
That's fine. The comments I had were, we were supposed to have this drafted for our adoption tonight.
which we don't.
Right. And I think we already have the pretty much unanimous support of the Harbor Commission. Bruce was here last time.
Well, then if you'd like to make a motion that we do have a resolution to support this for the next meeting?
I'll put it on the agenda. I'll write
Okay.
it. I think we're too late, but I'll write it.
Okay. And then just as discussion on CA 6, and I'm going to mix CA 4 in with it, as you were, and this is just a general announcement to the public that the Tiverton Fire Department overtime is now at 1,905, which is a dramatic decrease from what it has been every other month. I know there's a lot of contributing factors to this, but a lot of what we've done through the administrator, a lot of what the fire department has done to help us, I want to thank everyone involved because we are at an all-time low right now for this month. 1905.71. If you remember, it's been 34,000, it's been way up there. Now, with that said, we are 25,000 in the red, according to Denise's budget. But what I also noticed was the fire marshal's inspection. That line item is at 19,000, we're not spending that money anymore on overtime. I don't know if all of you know, but the fire marshals will be doing their inspections on regular time and won't be paid overtime. So what I was thinking, at some point, we'll transfer that money. Okay. And Brett, your CA3B?
Yeah, I just, this is a perennial piece of legislation that we've historically opposed, and I just wanted to inquire with the council if it was something we were continuing in opposition of, and if so, we could also provide a resolution to same.
Last year, we did oppose this as a recommendation from the tax assessor, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, in our own thinking on the matter, yeah.
This was a bill that would eliminate property taxes on partially built buildings. Is that the legislation you're referring to?
No, it puts a freeze on the valuation of the improvements until either the parcel or the property is sold or the condominium units are sold. So it essentially freezes the taxes as an undeveloped parcel while the developer holds it for a period of 2 years, I think, and then is, when the owner occupies it, is at full valuation. Which is something that each municipality, and Jay was really vocal about this the last go-around, each municipality has the authority to do that currently, and none have. And this would be a bill that would essentially force that policy upon municipalities.
So it was enabling legislation, but nobody's taking advantage of it, basically.
It's not necessarily enabling legislation as much as it is, I suppose, just local policy. We have the ability to tax what we want, however we want to do it by our own mechanism, our own legal mechanisms. Well, I'll draft a resolution, and we can put it on the agenda for the next meeting, and we can talk about it then more, I suppose.
Yes.
That way we'll just have it anyway.
Thank you.
Yep.
Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda without
I still have A5,
CA4?
CA5.
CA5, that's right. Go ahead.
Okay. I would just like to take a few minutes to, there's some very important recommendations in here on items that the firm of Sahadi Hague, when they did our audit, found. And I'd just like to check up to make sure that the recommendations that they have suggested are being followed, or I'd hate to see this just go to waste.
Are you asking that to Matt? No?
Specifically,
A5, I mean, there's a whole bunch of them, of recommendations.
You know, I'm always loath to speak for the treasurer, given that he's an elected official. And this audit is done for the council's benefit, auditing the treasurer. So it is the treasurer's responsibility to be in compliance with the management letter and report back to you that that's in fact going on. There are management responses.
Okay, so how about if I'll table this and put it on another agenda?
Yeah, well, I will-
We'll have the treasurer come to that meeting.
A quick comment, though. I think that the audit firm did a very fine job here. One of the things we were looking for, sometimes when we change audit firms after many years, is a fresh set of eyes running over the same financials. It should never be too comfortable. There should always be a sharp point to the pencil. And I'm pleased with the auditor's work. I'm glad they came up with some recommendations.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we need a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent.
Second. Motion been made in second. All those in favor? Unanimous.
Denise just walked in, but that's okay.
Do you want to talk to her, or you want to wait? Why don't we do it till meeting when she's prepared?
At least she'll know we're going to be asking.
No problem.
Public hearings and public presentations. Joseph Bossum, wind turbine noise issue.
Denise, the joint resolution?
That's on the agenda. You can take-
Had I known there was a dress code, I would have worn a jacket.
You can take a seat. You can take a seat.
Hard to get up.
Okay.
I want to speak to you about commercial windmills which have been and are planned for imposition on the town without town consideration. I guess you all know I sold my farm some time back. We're getting a library there, which I'm looking forward to. The land trust has about 93 acres, and then there's a development there that continues to grow. That development put a windmill in, and when the wind blows over, it's a two-bladed prop. I mention the two-bladed part because it's a big discussion among windmill advocates about whether three-bladed ones are quieter than two-bladed ones. I don't want to take any part in that. This two-bladed windmill wakes me up at night whenever the wind is over 12 knots. I've got to put earplugs in and listen to Brahms in order to go back to sleep. I don't like Brahms. It's an imposition. In addition to that, I understand from the staff that maintain the one that it yields a profit. There shouldn't be profit-making enterprises in residential area according to our code, yet we've let it go by. This one was imposed on us by the state. It wasn't reviewed by the town. There were further windmills coming down the pike, also approved by the state by, at the suggestion of some very influential forces in the state that have good purposes in mind. Windmills make sense. They don't use fossil fuels, but they belong in large places where there are no people. Like out on the ocean, get 60 or 70 windmills and get a full-time staff to maintain. So I have no problem with that. But getting a noisy windmill in a residential area which produces noise that exceeds our town regs and also is a profit-making enterprise, I think is something that you guys have got to consider. And I think you have to do something positive, or these inroads will continue. You've got to take a stand on windmills, just not let it go by. I think the small farm windmills are fine. I have solar panels on my house. They don't make any noise. I haven't paid an electric bill since I put them in. Well, I paid $100 last year. But the windmills, especially the two-bladed ones, those big commercials, are very invasive. And I want to bring it to your attention, and I hope that you will devote some of your attention to it, because I think it's yet another thing the town does not need. Thank you for your attention.
Madam President.
Yes.
Well, in 2010, the town council passed a moratorium when it was sent off to planning to die. It never came back to the council as far as any type of an ordinance. So as of right now, we don't have an ordinance that allows windmills to be built in the town. As you said, that one was placed there through the Farm Act or whatever it was.
Yeah, it was a subdivision of that.
But unfortunately, I don't know that the town has any ability to even tell the owner of that, we don't have an ordinance, so...
Well, fortunately, it broke down again, so it hasn't made any noise in the last 2 weeks.
I think it's a civil issue.
So if you're going to pass an ordinance,
That's just, well, as I said, the moratorium went out in 2010. We went to planning. One of these days, it may come back to the council, but as of right now, nobody can put another windmill in town, so... Good. That's the way it is right now.
but I want to alert you to the fact that it's a problem. It is a problem. And if we run with them, well, as we may have to do, for at least for a while, we'll get another one given to us by the state. And it's not what we want. It's not the kind of town we want. The dull roar at night. Any of you guys want to come over and sleep in my bed, you're welcome.
It's okay, Joe.
Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you.
Take it easy, Denise.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was a proposition. Michael Turner, building a dog park in Tiverton. Hi,
I'm here
welcome.
to bolster Barbara Pelletier's efforts in building a dog park here in Tiverton. I spoke with her. She's been working on this matter for 14 years. It hasn't been taken up or any kind of effort to build anything. In November of 2014, I took a week and a half and I just collected maybe about 300 signatures from people that lived here in Tiverton, and I asked them if they would like a dog park, and a majority, there was a couple no's, but a majority of them said yes. I don't know what the possibilities or, the best location for one is, but I'd like to have one built, try to get one built for the people that love their dogs, and I think it's a good idea.
Thank you. Barbara has been working on it for quite some time.
Oh, there she is.
Here she is.
We're still committed, we have money in the our budget for help with it, but as we know, the big thing is the continuous maintenance, allocation, and liability on the taxes that the tax, I was told it would kick up the insurance, our town insurance into another level because of the issue of unpredictable dogs biting. But as I've told you before, I think that everybody in the community needs to access the potential of the community in different ways. Some of the elderly have the bus and the senior center, and some elderly who just basically want to walk their dog in peace and have that given to them, and I think everybody deserves a chance at what we have to offer, and I'd be so happy to work with you, and I mean, the more people work at this, the better off we are, and anybody else, we can post the next Place and Pause meeting on the website if possible, and
Also, location has always been
that is, yes, and the fact that we have to have a parking lot that's plowed and doesn't cost additional money to plow it in winter, and all of those issues that, it's a difficult thing, and Mr. Lambert has been in on trying to find a place, right?
Barbara, the last time we spoke about this, you were in a conversation with,
DOT.
Is it DOT or?
Yes, and as well
What
as
used to be 9X?
I still have kept all the correspondence, and I wrote several letters to the DOT and Grid, and the Grid was willing to speak to DOT with that land that's behind the parking lot, but then unfortunately, our former town manager didn't pick up on it quick enough, and Cardi and all of the bridge people moved out of town after the completion of this Conner River Bridge, because that was kind of a little perk they were going to give us, and they had leftover fencing that they would have thrown our way, and that's a big expense, but it would have been great to have it for free. However, we can not give up.
I mean, who would I speak to?
Yeah, the town administrator would be the first person.
I just,
John?
you familiar with the way the skate park came into existence?
No, I'm not.
Well, we had a group of youths that wanted a skate park. And we had an available place over around River Marsh Road Recreation Area. So a group of volunteers got together, organized, raised money, put the organization together, and now we have a skate park in town. If you have 300 people that sign that signatures, we need to get each one of those involved.
Right, but we still would like to put it on town land.
Well, there are places in town, one place that was looked at was out at the...
Is that town farm? That skate park on?
Yes.
Okay, so you allowed that?
Town farm.
The town farm?
The town farm, there's a lot of grassy areas.
That's awesome.
Out there, like, to the right where you would go up into the landfill. There's a nice little area right there where it could be.
That's perfect.
But it's not something that the town is going to do for you or the administrator. It's going to take the citizens getting involved, organizing, and perhaps coming up with say a landscaper or two who are willing to help out with the maintenance out there, if possible. Or if you could get it into the budget, into recreation.
Would be willing to throw up some fences on town land to...
But it's going to take a volunteer effort. It's not something that you can ask the town to do. It's something that the citizens of the town have to do for themselves. So if people want the dog park, they need a volunteer to get it to happen. That's the way it works.
It would also be in cooperation with the town, also, of
But
course.
the footwork needs to be the volunteers that come together. That's how the skate park, it really taken like 6 years, I think. I know we put everything together, but they got it done. We got a nice little skate park over there that the kids are using. As far as the insurance umbrella, if anything hit us, it was that skate park as far as, so I don't know.
I don't know if our insurance would go.
I don't know how much it really...
Did someone tell you that, Barbara, that our insurance would go up with the dog park?
Yes, because it's a different level with a dog park. I was told by, my daughter is on the town council in Barrington, I think, they were looking into a dog park.
I think you have to have a rider just like we have a rider for the skate park. It's not the end of the world. I felt that people are giving Wilton some
And that would be the town's end of it, to make sure that we have a facility, in towns. But the initial, get it started, is gonna have to be the volunteers. You guys are gonna have to organize yourself and get the work done.
If I could know where this is going to be, then we could go out and ask for people's support in this. If I could say, all right, we're planning it for out here at the town farm.
I might be happy to work with you as a counselor, but I need to see a community effort to do the bulk of the work, and then I'd be happy to carry the ball as far as whatever, news will come to the council. See a community effort.
My first suggestion is that you meet with Mr. Wojcik, and talk to him. He may have some suggestions on where this could be. I think your location is the first thing you need, and then from there, see the work you need to do with that location. Apparently, the insurance does not sound like a huge deal.
Look into it. Just keep it the dogs, Bob. I'm not a cat guy.
Oh, you can't walk. Even you are, I don't think we want cats in there anyway, but, yeah, so maybe if you go to Mr. Wojcik and maybe with some thinking, someone can think of a place where we could put this, and then once you have a location, then you know the involvement it will take. But it will take volunteers, like Joe said, but I think all of us would be willing to,
I'm glad that Mad Dog Joe stepped forward here.
This is a good segue into a conversation that we've been trying to have for quite a long time, and it just made me think about it, that we ought to know with a little bit better specificity what property the town owns that is currently undeveloped or unimproved. I know there's parcels here and there, but it would be an exercise that we could maybe narrow the conversation a little bit more.
I mean, I was just thinking too, the recreation committee could probably help you also. Definitely, they could help you also, so that could get you, in with them, and maybe it's a project that they would like to help you with.
Thank you.
Thank you. Town council sitting as a board of licensing, advertised public hearing licenses, David T. Gorman, Sakana River Grill, LLC DBA Sakana River Grill, 524 Main Road, request for BV liquor license, subject to meeting all legal requirements, recommendation of building and zoning official. Take a seat.
This standing thing is unnerving.
And you can,
I'm Dave, this is my father Jim.
Hi.
He's a partner in the business, and my brother Jim and my mom Chris are also partners in the business. They're back there for space.
Just take those microphones
Yeah, so
down, if
that-
you will.
the building. You can tell us a little bit about the grill and about what you want to do.
It's going to be in the space formerly located near Eastern 524 West. It's going to be a contemporary family restaurant. The restaurant is now restaurant. We're going to do our dinner. We're about 70 seats, and we'll probably be open till about 9 p.m. during the week and weeknights, and 10 p.m. on the weekend.
Okay. And Nancy, we have a letter from the clerk's office saying that there's no permits.
Well, things are still in the pending stage. It's not due to open until the middle of May, so it would be subject to meeting all these legal requirements. I have something from the state that's pending also. It's gonna, he's got some more work to do, but he just wants to make sure the license would be approved.
Kind of like, A84B kind of thing. We wanted to be sure that there wasn't any opposition to acquiring the license before we went ahead and started spending money on construction.
Now, this is a public hearing, so we're going to open it to public comment. And so if anyone in the audience would like to comment on this. The fire chief.
Madam President, the fire department
doesn't have any problem as it stays as it is, but there would have to be an inspection. I was talking with a gentleman today on the phone, and they may be doing some renovations in there, so that would be subject to a fire marshal's inspection to make sure it's compliant. But we have no objection to that, other than that.
Okay. Any other comment from the public? Any other comment from the public? I'd like to close the public hearing. Any comment from the councilors?
I just had a question. No breakfast?
You have to go to the Four Corners Grill for that.
Maybe down the road, we wouldn't close the door on that.
Yeah. I just might, I don't know if you remember, that was kind of a breakfast. spot.
Yeah, family,
Right.
back in the day.
Remember the greasy egg?
Yeah, we're not closing the door on that. It's a possibility down the road. Good luck.
Any other questions from the council? Council? No, yeah, it used to be buddies. Okay, I'd entertain a motion to approve the request for the BV liquor license, subject to meeting all legal requirements.
I move that we approve the BV liquor license for Secundit River Grill LLC, doing business as Secundit River Grill, subject to meeting all legal requirements, including fire marshal inspection.
Second.
Motion been made and second. All those in favor? Opposed? Unanimous. Thank you.
Welcome to town.
Should we stay for the victual or is the
Yeah.
next on?
Yeah,
Well, you say you wanted it to be a restaurant with a bar. You've got a bar right now, so.
There is a bar there.
No, I'm saying we just made you a bar. We have to make you a restaurant.
That's right.
Non-advertised license, David T. Gorman, Secundit Grill, 524 Main Road, request for a victualling license, subject to meeting all legal requirements. Any questions from the council? Entertain a motion?
I move that we approve the victualling license for Secundit River Grill LLC, doing business as Secundit River Grill, subject to meeting all legal requirements, including a fire marshal inspection.
Second?
Motion been made and second. All those in favor? Opposed? Unanimous. Thank you, John. Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you.
When she, DBA New China Gourmet, 180 Main Road, request for victualling license, subject to meeting all legal requirements. Now this, Nancy, this is a name change, is that?
No, she
Okay.
is now taking over from the previous owner. I know this has been on a
Yeah.
couple of times under the previous owner, then they changed the name of the corporation, members and stuff, so now this is new. And I do have a letter received today, I'm sorry, Friday, I guess. Mr. Hall, the zoning official, that he's performed the walkthrough and recommends the transfer on the building license there. We also have something from the Department of Health that it's going to be issuing their approval on it.
Okay.
You just have one copy, or you have a bunch?
I just received it Friday. Do you want that from the,
If you could,
Sure.
I'll take a look at it.
Any questions from the council? I don't believe they're here, is that correct?
I don't see them here.
No, I don't think they are. I'd entertain a motion.
I move that we authorize, or we approve the request for a victualling license to Wen Shi, doing business as New China Gourmet on 180 Main Road, subject to meeting all legal requirements.
Second. Motion to made in second. All those in favor? Opposed? Unanimous. Robert Vitale, East Coast Wholesale, request to sell fireworks under a tent at 1560 Boogamarsh Road from April 1st through November 30th, 2015, subject to meeting all legal requirements. Hi, Mr. Vitale, you did this last year, I believe.
This is one at the flea market? Yes.
Yes. And we did issue this license last year, I believe. Yeah, okay, I thought you looked familiar. Any questions from the council?
Madam President, could I have the fire chief just confirm that, I don't know if have you presented this to the fire chief yet, sir? I just want you to confirm that this is under a tent and you don't have a problem with this.
That's correct, but he did the same thing last year, it would be under a tent. He's kind of in a catch-22, because he can't really get the permit, because he can't erect the tent, because he doesn't have the license, so it's, he's planning on doing exactly what he did last year, but the tent is not up yet so that we can inspect it, but he has issued plans for his, where he's going to have it and how he's going to take care of that. And we had no problems with him last year at all.
I'd entertain a motion.
I move that we approve the request to sell fireworks under a tent at 1560 Boomarsh Road to Robert Vitale, East Coast Wholesale. It's actually a fireworks license. I'm sorry, I'm going to say the date. From April 1st through November 30th, 2015, subject to meeting all legal requirements, including a fire marshal inspection and proper permitting.
Second?
Motion been made and second. All those in favor? Thank you.
Madam President, can I just, 30 seconds before we move on to the next thing? I just wanted to let everybody know, Nancy and I are working on a policy document and a kind of a test balloon for licensing. It's kind of a worksheet and checklist so that we have more of a structure for what we require and when the council is approving licenses. We tried to get it on tonight, but we ran out of time, so I expect that'll be in the next month or so.
Thank you.
Madam President, can I just add to that, and Council Pelletier doesn't realize this, but Attorney Stephanie here.
Attorney Stephanie, that's what we're calling.
Is going to be, she's offering her help on that as well, because she's versed in the licensing in Providence, so she may be able to give us some pointers we haven't covered.
So I take that back. Stephanie's going to be presenting a wonderful new policy. No, that'd be great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. Appointments and resignation of Jan Burgundy from the Tiverton School Committee effective March 2nd, 2015. I'd like to make a motion to accept Jan's resignation and say that I worked with Jan for many years and he has done some very good work for the Tiverton School Committee. It's very sad that he's leaving and it will be a loss to the Tiverton School Committee. I wish Jan luck. I know he's had his reasons to do this, but this would be a great loss to the community of Tiverton. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and second. All those in favor? Opposed?
I'm opposed.
You're opposed?
I don't want to resign.
Well, we can't stop him really, so...
Let's go protest.
Councilor DiMaggio's updating FY 2015-16 budget. I have put this on every agenda just to see if there's any updates. Matt, do you have anything?
Well, unfortunately, most of the updates are later in the agenda, in the form of transfers of different activities. I will say this much. Obviously, last year, we were in a position where we were trying to save every last penny so that we could end the year with as big a surplus as possible. This year, we're trying to save every penny because we're trying to keep our heads above water. And the difference isn't necessarily firefighter overtime. That's the most outrageous and overwhelming account, but it was stopped at a point where it kind of was last year. We're coming into difficulty because, first of all, A, it was a very tight budget, and secondly, it was the snowiest and coldest winter on record. And we are, as of yet, unreimbursed, and there may be some time passing before we are reimbursed at all. So we are covering these expenses from our existing budget as best as possible. So that's our current situation.
Thank you. Anyone have anything to add?
Yeah, I attended the meeting on Thursday night, and the few changes that they did make were the town hot box. They put that back in for $15,000, and I think they put $2,000 in for the harbor master assistant.
Did they take anything out to equalize it, or is it, no?
They also put 10,000 in the planning for
In
this.
planning, yes.
So they've increased their budget so far?
And they've probably voted halfway through this budget already.
Okay.
I don't think they had a final vote on capital yet.
Yeah,
So,
they're saving the hard ones for the end.
yeah, that's in there, but it's only provisional.
I think revenue's gonna change too.
It's usually opposite of what happens. They usually take from our budget and add to our budget, so it's a different year.
If they don't mind being tweaked, I will point out that they increased their own budget by a couple $100.
Oh, that's true. Yes, they did.
They did?
$250, I think.
Well,
I'm only tweaking them.
It's for recording.
It's fine.
is that for the recording secretary? Yes. Mr. Dunn?
Yes, ma'am. However, they did cut 70,000 from the rubbish collection part of the budget.
All right, so they did make up for it. Thank you. Thank you. All right.
Yeah, that's right, they went from 696 down to 620 or something to account for inflation and nothing else in the contract.
All right, so it is like last, yeah, okay. All right, anything else from the council?
I don't remember it, I was in attendance, but it could have.
Okay.
I'm sorry, where were you? All right,
I'm going to end this, and I'm going to the next one. Steve Hughes, Chairman of the Planning Board Funds. Is Steve here tonight?
No, he had another conflict tonight, so he was unable to make it.
I think he got what he was looking for though, didn't he? As far as... Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, I'll speak to it because I'm not, by cross purposes with Mr. Hughes.
It was a different account he was looking at?
What I did was identified every single account that had substantial balances remaining at this point in the year and froze it with the notion that we were going to have to move it and that money to support snow, removal, sand, etc. That doesn't mean that every single account on the list was going to be transferred. It just means that ultimately, at the end of the day, we have to keep the roads open, so we were going to make that the priority and work backwards. There are a couple of things we really can't touch. On-site wastewater disposal inspection account can't be touched. A lot of this money from the planning board is already obligated to the consultants via a legally binding contract, and so it won't be transferred. There's a little bit of money there that Mr. Hughes volunteers for the effort, but you'll notice from the transfer forms tonight, it wasn't necessary, at least this evening, it's not necessary.
Okay, any other comment from the council? We'll move on. Town administrator, request transfer of funds to cover snowstorms. List attached totaling $65,052. All of you have your list in front of you? Mr. Booth? Did you want to?
We can tag team this one, but the department head gets the first crack.
I guess this is following suit to what Matt just brought out. There was a group of funds they froze. My funds at the DPW are depleted as far as any funds to back any of these payments up. And between myself, Denise, and Matt, this list was put together, hopefully not damaging any one entity too badly, but it is funds that have been spent to that date of March 13th, and the total due at that particular time to our vendors and to fill the other accounts is $65,052. So I'm requesting transfers from my own department and through Matt to fill this void.
So most of the accounts that we looked at were accounts where we had unexpended balances due to long-term vacancies in a position or bills that we've already paid, and thus we're going for the balance drawdown. That's particularly true in the case of the property liability. It's a once-a-year insurance bill. We paid it already, so that remaining balance is available for transfer. And then was formerly hired relatively deep into the fiscal year, so it had been budgeted for a full year. We're not going to be rehiring any sort of maintenance seasonal employee. And you'll notice, I've said this before, my budget for next year is to close that account off completely and transfer the balance to the full-time worker. Audit services, again, were already done. The town administrator's education budget, if I get any more education, my head will explode, so I'll read it. The senior center bus, again, we got a bus later in the fiscal year, so we weren't running the service. And on and on, that's the theme. We're trying to take from accounts that we have no further demands upon in order to meet Mr. Bellucci's needs.
Now, how about Rick's, swim because of...
We got the swim program. Same thing with the employees, fees and equipment, and beach employees. We had last year some beach closures and other times when we simply didn't pay people because the beaches were either closed or there just wasn't sufficient demand. So that balance is sitting there.
So are we zeroing out those recreation line items?
Not entirely.
Okay, because I was going to say.
No, we tried to spread it out.
We have to start
Yeah.
Well, as soon as they...
the summer at least.
Yeah, we've got to go from at least Memorial Day through the end of the fiscal year, so we're aware of that.
Great.
And Sue, are you comfortable with this, that...
What is, I'm sorry. What is the difference between recreation employees, that's actual rec employees? So that's summer recreation.
Right.
Correct, camp counselors.
Beaches has its own.
Beaches and lifeguards and
Lifeguards,
gatekeepers.
okay, that's, sorry.
Any questions from the council?
I have one question. Are we going to be transferring more money when we come to the pothole season, or we
We're going to have to find more funds to pay for the last snowstorm this Saturday and salt that we received. We were out there for 4 hours, all the guys, on overtime, spreading sand and salt. And we have salt deliveries that we received after this March 13th date. And we have tremendous problems with our roads, if you even want to get into that.
So we pretty much used up all that money that would have went for potholes and things already?
I probably have $10,000, $12,000 that we're working on as we're working on the potholes, but there's major problems beyond potholes out there, so.
Yeah, I saw it
Yep.
in around town.
Okay.
Any further comment from the council? Or questions? No? Entertain a motion?
I move that we approve the requested transfer of funds to cover snow-related items for the total of $65,052 from the aforementioned accounts to various sand and salt, snow removal, and overtime accounts at the DPW.
Have a second?
Second.
Motion been made and second. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Unanimous? Thank you, Steve. Town administrator requests transfer of funds to reimburse DPW for expenses related to gazebo installation at the Gamache Park from account number 8790-5181 Beaches to account number 5540-6795 DPW Drainage for a total of $7,963.91.
I'll go first this time. Councilman Silva is correct. A lot of good things happening this time because of volunteers. And over the years, money was raised for playground equipment and for this gazebo, which sits at Building Rush Park. And a former town employee spearheaded that effort and worked very hard on it. But others also helped, members of the Recreation Committee who had contacts, got the thing shipped. It was very heavy and not easily moved in size of some of the components. Got it all here somehow by a miracle. And the only part that hits the town budget is the actual installation, which did require, an apron, concrete, the footings had to be poured, and it was immense time. So Steve can fill in the rest. I kind of see this as a distinction without a difference. A lot of this money is going to go to Steve's budget anyway. So you call it whatever you want to call it. We're going to score it to the gazebo because we need to account for the fact that the time and the effort was made and the resources spent. But really, at the end of the day, this is just keeping DPW on a level footing. The gazebo is there for the public to use. I'm hoping it is utilized extensively because it provides cover for people. It's in between the ball field and the restrooms.
Again, this doesn't include any costs of the DPW other than a crane rental that we had to pay out of our budget, paying for the concrete pad and paying for the contractor to put it in and float it, and the materials, the steel reinforcement. So it really is just reimbursing the DPW for those costs, no labor, no equipment of our own, and it really is going to end up in the snow and ice budget anyhow. It's replacing paving money that we already transferred into snow and ice, and we'll probably use it up for potholes and things like that, so.
Any questions from the council? Like to entertain a motion?
I move that we award a transfer or approve the transfer of funds to reimburse the Department of Public Works for expenses related to the installation of the gazebo at Booker Marsh Recreation Park from account 87905181 beaches seasonal employees to account 55406795 DPW drainage for the amount of $7,963.91.
Second. Second.
Motion made in second. All those in favor?
Thank you.
Opposed? Unanimous. Town Administrator requests council approval to renew terms of the contract between the town of Tiverton and Ronald Helger's Landscape for 1 year.
Madam President, this contract includes the town's option to renew its terms for 2 successive years after its expiration date. For those of you who don't know, the cemetery benefits from the services of a superintendent and maintains not only the grounds, but actually opens and closes the graves and does all of the work associated with running a cemetery. And his fees have not been altered for those 3 years. So some of his fees that will pass through to the public that use his services are suggested to go up. However, the commission, I shouldn't say however, I'll just say notwithstanding that, the commission feels very comfortable with this and recommends the extension of this contract. And I can say, on any given day, we have 101 different complaints will come into the town administrator's office, but never a complaint about the services provided at the cemetery. I think Mr. Helber's done a very fine job, and thus we should strike our option for 1 more year and continue this contract.
Are we concerned that we're not meeting the time frame set out in the contract with that 90-day notice? Or is that a question that doesn't need an answer?
I don't really think it needs an answer. He's continuing to work under its existing terms, and we'll be sharper in the future. I just think I turned it around almost as quickly as I got it, so.
Any discussion from the council?
Just to say that Lonnie's been doing this for as long as I... No, I don't know that. I couldn't say that. Whenever someone says that, I always say, well, there was a time I was in diapers and school, so. But, and he's done a very good job, and I know from personal experience. So that's important. So I have no problem making a motion to approve the renewal contract for the first option, which is 2 years? 1 year.
1 year.
1 year. Okay, so for 1 year, effective May 1st, 2015, subject to the contract.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Motion been made in second. All those in favor? Opposed? Unanimous. Process of appointing vacancy to school committee, memorandum from town solicitor regarding terms of the appointee. I guess I'm going to present this. As far as I understand, it is the council's duty to appoint somebody until the next election, which would be November of 2016. I've asked questions regarding that. So the election of November 2016 would normally be 3 school committee members, now will be 4. The lowest vote getter of those 4 will take up Jan McGundy's term, which would be 2 more years. So it would be 3 with the regular 4-year term, and 1 would be for the 2-year term. In discussion with Nancy, we thought that we could put the ad out now, and hopefully try to get the school committee a member as soon as possible, because they're working on a 4-member school committee right now, which hasn't been a problem, but it could be. So our next meeting is April 13th, and I thought at that time we could interview the applicant and appoint someone. Does that sound okay with everyone?
Wait, so when did you, I missed the date.
April 13th would be our next meeting. So
How are we
Nancy,
going to advertise and?
I've talked to Nancy, and she felt that that was possible.
I'm going to get an advertisement out first thing in the morning. It should be in this week's kind of times is all you can advertise. I
Yeah.
assume you're going to follow like the budget committee
Mhm.
ad?
Yeah.
That went out, and that would give about 10 days, right? It
Well,
should be in this
it would be, have
Wednesdays.
to be in before.
This Thursday's kind of time, so Wednesdays. And I'll put it to be in by the 9th or 10th and get it on your agenda for the 13th. It's tight, but it's,
I think it's out there that Jan has resigned. It's been since March 2nd, and I know there's people talking about it. If we don't get any applications, well, then we'll go from there. If we don't get anyone we feel we should appoint, then we'll go from there. But I just thought it would be the best for the school committee if we speed this process and get them someone. Any objections or any comments?
Are we going to do the interviews in
Open
a regular
session.
meeting?
Yeah, it'll be like the budget committee. It would be like what we did for the budget committee,
Okay,
how we appointed that person.
very good.
Any suggestions? Do I need a motion for this? Probably not. No. Okay,
We'll have to add.
all right. So that's that. Okay, G3, Timothy T. Moore, attorney for Tiverton Four Corners Properties LLC, requests to schedule a public hearing to amend zoning ordinance to allow shared parking in village commercial zone under Article 10, Section 1E, referred to Planning Board. This is part of, if you go to 4 and you notice everything I've put on 4, I think there's been a lot of problems. A lot of things have come to our attention regarding zoning down in that area. And there's a lot of things that are being done that aren't necessarily permitted. We're stopping other people from doing them who come here to ask for permits. And I think that all these things should be reviewed for the planning board. We've talked about all of this in the past. And I will tell you which ones I put there is outdoor events and accessory events, Article 10, Section 1E, shared parking, and environmental review statement requirements in watershed protection overlay zone. I thought we could refer this to the planning board. I would hope that the planning board will also talk with the conservation committee in regard to what they feel about the watershed protection overlay zone, and then come to us with recommendations. Any,
With that, though.
go ahead, Joe. What's the-
Well, in 2010, we asked for an opinion on no windmills, and still waiting on that.
Well, I'm going to...
This is like sending it off into a black hole.
I'm
The
going to...
planning board has an agenda about this tall, and we have a business that needs help now, and he's came to us and asked for a public hearing to address it. And if you look at the backup on this, you can see it's a very simple change. We allow this type of parking. We had a study done in the north end probably 10 years ago, and all the recommendations came back on parking to have shared parking. So it was built into our ordinance under general commercial that we allow shared parking. I see no difference in village commercial. They should have the same opportunities. They have a good network of people working down there. They're the one part of the town that actually has a business organization working together to try to solve problems with things like parking and not being a nuisance to the neighborhood. This gentleman needs attention. I'm not willing to send this to planning. This is the council's, we're shirking our responsibilities by not addressing this.
Joe, I don't feel like we're shirking our responsibilities at all. There's been many things coming up that have come up recently that make me feel that we need to make this a priority of the planning board.
So what's
This is a process we've always followed. Whenever there is a change proposed to zoning regulations, we always,
Right.
I don't know that any instance that we haven't, always at least refer it to the planning
Right.
board for a recommendation and opinion.
What are you
And then
referring? We haven't made it, we haven't
change.
come up with any changes for them to review.
It's right here.
We
in
should
red.
send them a
Yes,
change.
there is
There's
a
a
change.
proposed
There is a
change to the
change.
order, to the code.
No, it's not what I'm
Yes.
talking about.
I don't
I have no
understand
problem
the
with them
question.
coming to the public hearing and voicing their opinion.
But this is the process that we follow.
This is the process that previous councils have used to send things off into a black hole and to send businesses away from town.
No, that is
That's been a
not.
repeated abuse.
Excuse me, can I make a suggestion? Because under the Zoning Enabling Act, the process is before a public hearing is held by the town council, the matter is supposed to be referred to the planning board for a recommendation. But here's my suggestion. Refer the matter to the planning board, set an outside date for your public hearing, so the planning board knows that they have a certain amount of time to get their recommendation back
That's
to you.
kind of what I was trying to say. We need to schedule a public hearing.
I thought I was gonna have to use this again today.
Well, I just said that we need to have them, well, look, if we're willing to set a public hearing for this gentleman in 2 months, the planning board has 2 months to look at
All
it.
right.
If we just send it to them without any type of guidelines, when we'd like an opinion on it, and I see this as a no-brainer. We allow it in other parts of town. I see it as a no-brainer.
But there's many things that they have to look at down there. And like I said, there are some people doing things, and some people were not allowed doing
We
things.
can't be
This
proactive
needs
and
to be
try to help
looked at.
businesses, then we're not going to stand here and tell the public
All
that we all
right,
ran.
so what we're gonna do is we're gonna set a date as recommended by our attorney. I would think May would probably be the best time. That gives them two, so we'll do June.
Either do the end of May or
Well, we've got a lot.
The end of May.
We'll do the end of May, and I've got my calendar. May 26th, we haven't,
It's Tuesday,
May 26th, we have a meeting.
the 25th.
The 25th is Memorial Day, so we have a meeting May 26th. I'm going to be away. I'm going to be away for that entire week, but it doesn't, I don't have to be
Back towards
here.
April.
No, I don't,
Why don't,
first of all,
Why don't-
let's be realistic, the planning board has a big job in front of them right now. So let's try to get them through that. I think we should talk about June, the first meeting of June.
may I make a suggestion that we have this as a dedicated item, and then we have it on a separate night, say a Wednesday or something? Or not?
President, can I speak first?
1 second. No,
Yes. No, but
no, there's not 5 Mondays in June.
there's, the first is a Monday.
Well, why don't we do June 1st? And just dedicate it to this? Because we also are asking them to come back to look at other things, and that's what the floor is. So I think Brett's idea is a good idea, and we'll just dedicate that night to that. We'll try not to put anything there unless we have another priority, but I think we'll be okay. And before we do anything, we really should have the planning board look at this. All right, and Mr. Moore, that's what what I'll say to you, before we deliberate on this at all, we do need some kind of recommendation from the planning board.
That's understood. I just wanted to give you 2 seconds of background, which is that we have a zoning application before the zoning board, before the meeting house, to permit special events and et cetera.
Which is already going on.
Yes.
Which is special events are already.
Which is been put on hold because of Mr. Tights, as legal counsel to the town, advised that to the zoning board that they could not hear a special use permit with a zoning variance attached to it. And even though the town has historically
granted special use permits and variances. Mr. Tykes advised them that that was improper based upon state law and the town zoning ordinance. As a result of which, the owner of the property had basically two choices. One was to go out and build a lot more parking spaces, which I think everybody does not want to see happen. Or the other alternative was to apply to amend the zoning ordinance as requested to allow shared use parking, because there's more than adequate parking at Tiverton Four Corners. So this, we feel, is going to avoid any watershed issues, is going to avoid having to do any more parking spaces, and will provide more than adequate parking which currently exists. So that's why, you know, if everybody in the town is happy to leave things in the status quo, we're willing to wait, but otherwise, we would love to resolve this sooner rather than later.
Well, that's why we're referring it to the planning board to see if they agree with you. They will also talk with the Conservation Commission, see if this is a problem for them, and they'll go forward and come to us with a recommendation June 1st. Thank you.
Thank you.
Did you get a motion on that? Yes. So I think you need two, but I move that we refer this item, and, well, actually, this item and all of Denise's items in G4 to the planning board with an urgency on the request by Ms. Weir as priority. And request that, or inform them that we have a scheduled public hearing for June 1st, and we'll need, at the very least, that opinion
On the shared parking.
on the shared parking before then.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Is there discussion?
The only thing I'll say is, your number 2 item,
Article? Okay, go ahead.
yes, the simultaneous dimensional variance and special use permit. Whether we have done that in the past or not, I don't know, but I do know that the Economic Development Commission in 2011, I think it was, came to the council requesting that that be amended. And there was a long public hearing process, and it was finally concluded by the majority of the town council that no such change was necessary, because people weren't coming to the town looking for both a dimensional variance and special use permit simultaneously. So that has been our policy, whether it's implied or otherwise, for the last 4+ years. So.
Thank you.
I don't know, just if anybody wants to refer back to, I'm going to probably kill his name, John A. Paganini. His letter that we sent us March 2nd kind of explained what the issue was. If you reread that, you'll understand exactly. The man obviously knows what he's talking about because he's dead on. So I would ask you to reread that.
All right, so I have a motion on the floor and second, I believe. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? I'm sorry. It's unanimous, Nancy. Okay.
Just so everybody knows, I was in the minority of that vote.
Council, the next item.
I'm sorry,
That's
yeah.
right, that's right.
I move that we schedule a public hearing for June
1st.
All right, January 4th.
June 1st, 2015, 7 o'clock in council chambers. Special meeting.
Second.
Motion's been made and second. All those in favor? Opposed? Unanimous.
Start throwing my votes.
All right. Thank you for not making me use my gavel. Councilor Pelletier requesting sealing executive session minutes of March 18th, 2015.
This is pretty self-explanatory, but I'll, for the benefit of anybody who didn't read it, I will explain. I am requesting that we unseal the executive session minutes from March 18th, which is Wednesday, I believe, of last week. And my rationale for it was, and I voted not to go into executive session, but I did vote to seal the minutes in case I wanted to bring it back up again, but evidently that's not necessary. But my feeling at the time was there was no exclusion under the open meetings legislation 4246-5 that protected us in executive session from having that meeting in executive session. And I thought that the meeting ought to be in public, or at least that section of the meeting ought to be in public. And after sitting through the meeting, I was convinced that that was the case because I found no evidence in that meeting from the conversation that we had of anything that was enumerated under 4246-5. And so that is mine.
The only thing I'd like to say is before I put the executive session on there, I did check with the attorney, and he did say we were covered under that. I felt it was a personal matter. We were talking about an employee that presently works for us also in the discussion. We were talking about references from private sectors, who gave us references on these people, and I did check with Andy. I do want to note that we did the same exact procedure for when we were interviewing the town administrator. We did go into executive, talked about all the candidates, and came out and voted. So we have past practice, we have done that before. What I understand, we've done that for others also.
The distinction between the town administrator is a potential employee of the town.
So is the town solicitor.
They're a contractor, they're not an employee of the town, are they?
I believe that they are, and that's what the town solicitor had told me at the time, that he felt that we could do that because it is an employee of the town.
So what provision are we enacting when we go into executive session and just say it's an employee of the town?
We're talking about a person who works for the town.
I'm talking about there is no specific section of this law that provides for us to just say this person is a potentially or one of the parties is an employee of the town, which I disagree with. But even if, let's say he were.
We were talking about his performance.
Did we give him written notice?
He knew that we were there.
That's not the same thing.
I disagree.
No, that's not, they are not the same thing, because we took this,
Okay,
there
so
was a...
why were we allowed to go in when we were talking about the administrator?
I'm not talking about the
But we did
administrator.
exactly the same thing, and you did not oppose that. So I don't understand now why we're opposing this.
So you're saying if I have an opinion a year ago, I'm not allowed to gather new information and change it
I guess
under different circumstances?
I disagree. Before I did it.
So maybe I was wrong a year ago when we hired the town administrator, and that meeting should have been an open session as well. I don't think that cuts the legs out from any future arguments I might have.
Well, it doesn't, but I did check with the attorney at the time, and he advised that I go into executive, and that's why I did it.
Okay,
If anybody here, does any of the other councilors want to?
I'm just going to read one thing before I yield the floor. A public body may hold a meeting closed to the public pursuant to Section 4246-4 for one or more of the following reasons. 1. Any discussion of the job performance, character, or physical or mental health of a person or persons, provided that such person or persons affected shall be notified in advance in writing and advised that they may require that the discussion be held at an open meeting. Failure to provide such notification shall render any action taken against the person or persons affected null and void. Before going into a closed meeting pursuant to this subsection, the public body shall state for the record that any persons to be discussed have been so notified, and this statement shall be noted in the minutes of the meeting. If that is the provision we are enacting when we talk about what happened on Wednesday night, we are in clear violation of Section 4246-5. And I'm not just being petty about it. This has happened before, and we had an instance where the individual who was in the building was not handed written notice, but given a verbal notice. I'm not sure if it was this town, but I know of Barrington, thank you.
Yeah, it wasn't this committee. This
And the action that was taken in the room was void, because it was in direct conflict with the law. I'm not an attorney, but I'm also not a moron, and I can read this plainly and see that we did not do that. And so I'm asking, what is the section of the law that we are enacting or indicating that we are abiding by when we go into executive session to discuss what happened on Wednesday?
I have a request.
It was stated in the executive I just, clearly, I'm going to say again, I checked with the attorney, and he told me to do it. He instructed me to do it this way. You should have, my only thing, Brett, is you really should have objected this way before we went into executive session. Before we went in there and had this argument, before we went in there, instead of voting no, and then now after it's all done.
Well, it's very difficult to see into the future and see what was going to happen in a meeting I had yet to attend. I can't object to something that hasn't happened yet.
But you knew what we were going to speak about in that room. Anyway,
I'm going to make a motion to forward this to the town solicitor and bring us something back in the next meeting so that we're, in compliance, and we'll go by his opinion. Is that all right? You think, Brett? Would you second that, or?
I mean, no.
No? All right.
Because I don't need an attorney to tell me what I can obviously read myself.
But I do.
and I feel that I do need the attorney
Laws
to tell
tend to be
me.
ambiguous, so.
This one isn't, it's not, it really isn't.
I don't know that. I know everything I see out of the legislature.
Did we give notice to any of the people in that room? Written notice?
And I'm not sure, Brett, that we had to. Let me play the devil's advocate just for a moment. We relied on attorney's advice. Now, of course, Joe is asking that we again rely on attorney's advice as to whether or not we did the right thing in listening to attorney's advice. I'll leave that to another day.
It was a different attorney.
But the point I'm trying to make is that in relying on the advice of an attorney, our town solicitor, we went into a closed executive session where I think our own rights are at issue. And by that I mean, I would think that believing that we were in executive session, making comments with respect to a town solicitor and hiring a town solicitor, we may or may not have made comments that we would not have wanted at some point made public. My position is that in this type of situation, this is certainly the argument that I would make, is that as a member of this town council, I had a right to rely on the attorney's advice. You may argue at this point whether he was right or wrong on an issue which I believe should have been raised at some earlier point. But in reliance on that, I took certain steps. At least the assumption would be that I took certain steps. I may or may not have made comments that I made. I may or may not have expressed opinions that I expressed. So that I would think that as an individual member of this town council, I at this point can assert my right to have those minutes sealed and not made public at this point.
Those minutes are sealed, by the way.
And not made public at this point. I think that's the type of argument that you have to make. For 6 of the people here, I can't say that I gave this a lot of thought, but certainly for 6 of the people here, you're lay people. What you have to do is rely on the advice that you're getting from town council. You can't have somebody second-guessing you after you've taken those certain steps in belief that you were fully protected, or in belief that whatever comments or opinions you expressed were going to be fully protected in executive session. That would be the argument I would make.
I agree with Mr. Lambert.
I just have one comment. As Brett mentioned, that if we inadvertently held within executive session, then it would make the vote null and void. We did not take any vote whatsoever in executive session. We specifically came out of executive session
Which-
and did a public vote for the new town solicitor, all three of them. So I feel comfortable, whether they're open, whether they're unsealed, whatever, I don't think that anything would have changed. And we did take the vote in public.
Which we had to, which we
I absolutely, totally agree, and I'm not saying that we did take any action. I'm just saying that the substantive portion of the conversation happened in an executive session without the airing of the public, and we are supposed to do our business in public, and the exceptions are clearly identified. And that's my argument.
I'll use Mr. Pelletier's words, this is ludicrous, and I move for vote.
So, Brett, would you like to make a motion to unseal the minutes, or and see if you have a second? Because that's where we go from here. The minutes are sealed, there was a vote.
Well, I guess
I move the vote. I move the vote.
Which would be, what would be the vote? To just do...
To unseal the minutes.
To unseal the minutes. Because I had made a motion to at least have the
That
solicitor
didn't get a
review it.
second.
So it didn't get a second, so we're moving on.
We're moving on.
No action was taken, minutes remain sealed.
that's not really how that works, but I'll just let that go.
No, why don't you tell us why that doesn't work, and then
You
we'll
can't
go
just
from
say
there.
move the vote and then you move on.
We'll take a vote. I move the vote, let's take a vote.
That's not what that
But
means.
you don't have a second. You don't.
Nobody made a motion.
I'll make a motion.
I made a motion.
I made the motion to move the vote.
You didn't get a second.
Does anyone want a
second.
second?
There you go.
Now we get a second.
Motion's remained second, all those in favor to move the vote?
All in favor, let's do it right.
What am I doing?
His motion was to unseal the minutes.
That's not what
No, that's not the
My
motion.
motion is,
That's not the motion. Brett never made the motion to unseal the minutes. The only motion I had on the
Okay,
floor.
I have a motion by
Joe, that's the
Joseph
only
Souza
motion.
that had no
Right.
second, so it fails for a second.
So
I
what
have
are
a
we doing?
motion by Councilor Perry to move the vote. This is a motion just to move the vote, not for the item.
does is end
And it's
discussion
seconded
on
by
that.
Councilor
There's no motion on the
DiMaria.
table.
So you end the discussion and you take the vote to move
the vote.
question.
Under Robert's rules, this would be, you're calling the question. So the vote is
Right.
whether or not you're going to call the question, it'll shut off debate, and then you can take a vote from there. If there's a motion and a second.
All those in favor
All those in favor?
Yes.
to move the question? Opposed? Okay. Now, do I have a motion? Then I'll move on.
Yeah, I mean,
do you-
this doesn't follow Robert's rules. There's no underlying motion, so you can't move a vote that we're not even, there's not even a motion on the floor. I will make a motion.
Why don't you make a motion?
I will make a motion that we refer this item to the solicitor for an opinion in the next meeting.
I'll second that.
Motion been made and second, all those in favor? Opposed?
All right, you died.
5-2.
I would like to know.
Councilman Pelletier requests administrator and treasurer to update council on current operations and performance of the police pension fund.
There was a memo that went along with this, but evidently it did not get printed.
No. Oh, we did get something for Phil.
The one I
Yeah.
wrote. I wrote a memo, a briefing memo. It's fine, I can just wing it. I am requesting some update on current operations and performance of the police pension board. The treasurer has been good enough to send along the investment policy and for both the police pension and for the municipal investment portfolio. That is less appropriate to this discussion, but maybe I don't have a hard copy of the actuarial study or report, and there were some questions I had in the audit that I posed at the last discussion of the audit and forwarded to the administrator for review. Matt, do you have any? The memo really summarizes everything I wanted to ask and say, but...
Did you send a memo to Nancy?
I did. It's fine.
I don't know when I saw a memo. Those aren't the kinds of things I forget.
It was sent to Nancy
Yeah.
as part of the backup.
So, what I will say is this, though, hold on. The Police Pension Board met last week. We accepted at that time a report from Washington Trust. We didn't accept, we discussed a report from Washington Trust investors updating us on the status of the fund. I'll back up and explain why I just corrected myself. We never accept the report in the same meeting that it is given to us, we ask questions, we push back, we follow up, and we don't accept the report until the following quarter. But the unedited, or not yet accepted, but still very professionally prepared report, we've had another very good quarter with the Police Pension Fund. Over the year 2014, the account grew 6.3% based on its investment activities. Just for a point of reference, the Dow Industrials were up 10%, the S&P 500 were up 13.7%, but that's not where we invest the pension fund. We don't expose ourselves to that much risk. We have somewhat more conservative posture because we're talking about people's lifetime pension benefits. And compared to other funds over the same period, we grew 6.3%, the state of Rhode Island 4.5%, Lifespan and Care New England both experienced right around 3% growth. So our fund managers, the fund allocation that they're using to protect our assets are doing, would appear to be doing a very fine job of it and positioning the town for the future. Over the most recent quarter, we're actually doing even better than the rest of the marketplace. Somewhat more sluggish growth in the markets. The Dow was up 2.2%, the S&P 500 was up 2.6%. Our account with Washington Trust grew 3.6%. So just to summarize, if I can get to the right tab quickly, over the last year, our beginning value in the fund was $8.761 million. At the end of 2014, at the end of the last 12 months, $9.641 million. So over the last 12 months. So that would include the net of contributions and withdrawals, so the net investment, $316,637, realized gains of $33,574, unrealized gains of $369,028, and income received of $161,348. So what the rest of that meeting, you can have this if you want, it's got my notes in it. I'll distribute a copy to the entire council. This is a public document and it'll be posted. I asked the question and I would like the actuary to answer, and this is what we're in the process of doing now. First of all, when he's anticipating giving us another report on the overall fund, and secondly, whether he intends to restate the fund at that time. And we discussed it for quite a while with our investment advisors. We're probably likely to take a little bit of a hit if we update the mortality tables being used to size the unfunded mandate. But then we are probably going to come out a little bit ahead because we don't grow the salaries in our police department anywhere near as quickly as is assumed in the original report. The original actuarial report assumed 3% every single year. The town has never achieved that with this salary account. So those salaries projected into the future at the point of retirement will be somewhat lower. than what they would have been under those assumptions. So there's going to be a bit of a balancing act, and actuarial science is beyond my intellectual ability to grasp or desire to, because it's not exactly exciting stuff. But the professionals who do it, I expect them to come back with an opinion on whether or not we need to restate and then a schedule. Because this doesn't come out of taxpayer dollars, it's paid for out of the fund, and if we think it's necessary to restate, then we should. But that'll be a decision brought to the Police Pension Board at its next meeting. Is there anything, when I get you a memo, I'll make sure I'm attentive to the details.
I'll put it on again for...
I just had one question. This, the returns we're seeing, so it was 6.3%. Is that, you know, is it up this year from years past? Have you looked at the history on that?
What I think we all kind of understand is that under Bank of America's management, the fund shrank quite a bit over a period of time. And it rebounded somewhat. But once Washington Trust took over, a great deal more attention has been paid. The allocation of assets is different. And they've been in place really just about a year and a month.
I think you told me this before, I just had to get it back, and I understand, I remember it. Thank you.
The POA was getting out of this business, and Washington Trust was getting into it.
Yeah.
Trying to build a reputation is a completely different ball of wax.
Yeah.
Matt, the 5-year plan that was put together 2 years ago and submitted upstate, does that have to be, could it be updated, or do we have to stick with that 5-year plan?
Well, I think that's going to be question 2. So question 1 is to the actuary, shall we restate the plan? And then we'll have to look at that, and whether or not it makes a major change in our unfunded liability. I think we would go back to Rosemary Booth globally and ask her whether it would be necessary to redo the FIP, the Funding Improvement Plan. It's probably due, and as Councilman Pelletier often points out, we've got to fix what the actuary is doing too, because he's often relying upon inaccuracies in his own, he's just not updating his own understanding of what the town has been contributing, which is unfortunate. The town is overpaying into this account at a time when the market is going up. So we couldn't have set up the strategy and executed it, right? There's good things sometimes just happen to you, and that's kind of what's happening to the town. The police pension contribution is made immediately in the beginning of the fiscal year, so our investment advisors have the entire year to invest that money. So it's been a very wise and effective strategy because the market has been performing so well.
So we started out at, was it 54% or 58%? 52? What was it? 54%. And we're now at 63.
We actually don't know what we're at.
We don't really know what we're at.
Well, according to the actuarial, that's...
Which is wrong.
Which is wrong.
Which is wrong.
So we know it's not 63, but we don't know what it is.
Okay. Because I agree with what Mr. Pelletier said the other night, that we were at the budget meeting. And we're putting it, last year we put in 800,000. This year we're down to 700,000. But if you look at that, the actuarial, in about 5 years, I believe it goes to over $1 million.
Yeah, and that's why we need to look at this carefully, because having front-loaded as much as the town has, the town may have actually gotten ahead of that curve a little bit and knocked those payments down to a reasonable number. We need to know what that number is for a long-term budget. It's such a big part of our budget. Just got to remember, remind everybody, I know the council knows, I'm not addressing these comments to the council, but to the public at large. We have a $19.5 million municipal budget, and we're putting $700,000 of that into the police pension fund. That's a really big investment. And so we've got to make sure we get these numbers right going ahead to the future.
I agree.
I mean, there is a point at which the intersection of the two streams, that point is very important to an analyst who's going to make decisions on what to do with this fund, where to put money, and we don't know where that is. So we know that the two lines are going to intersect at some point. We know that they're going to intersect. We don't know the slope of those two lines, and that is really important because it could be that those lines are more parallel in future, or it could be that those lines diverge in future. And we're hoping, and at least that's my understanding of, So I'm hoping that because we have been front-loading a bit in the last few years, that is a lot more manageable, and the delta between what the anticipated outflow requirement is and what we're generating in returns and inputs is closer to the same, closer to zero. Right now, because we have this number of 700,000 that never goes anywhere, at some point it has to, because our liabilities catch up with us, and that would require us to put in that $1.5 million over the course of the next 20 years. It sort of does this and then comes back down immediately when you start catching up. But the cheapest we can get in right now is right now. If we push this off for further down the amortization schedule, it costs more because the liabilities haven't waited while we were putting money somewhere else.
I agree, and again, this could help us in future budgets also. I mean, if we can take $100,000 out of there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's really hard to sometimes explain to people that $700,000 spent today is incredibly important, because the extra $100,000 we're putting in could, in 10 years, be $1 million easily. And that's really what we need to think about, is what happens to that money over the course of time. Because we know our costs and expenditures are going to rise. We need to make sure we're up ahead of that, plus some. And I think our investment policy probably should reflect that. I mean, it is old, from 2011, and it's based on Bank of America's recommendations, so I'm sure Washington Trust has something that they can make an official statement or policy. That would be nice to have. And while we're here, because it's here, also our investment policy as of January 19th, 2010, for town assets could use, and I don't know if this is an internal policy or an official kind of town policy. I imagine it's just an internal policy. It was created by the treasurer at the time. It's not, I don't think it accurately represents what we ought to be doing or what we are doing. And some of the language is a little funky. And it's just dated. I mean, it makes references to reporting on the treasurer's website, and I'm not sure we do that, and I don't even think there is a treasurer's website. There's a page at the town's website. I mean, if we're going to have something that tells the public what we're doing, it ought to be accurate. But whatever. Like I said, I'll put this on again if you want, or we can just do the memo for distribution. But,
Okay.
This goes back to 2010, actually.
Yeah.
Nothing outdated.
How's the treasurer?
She provided it, so she's right on top of it.
She's right there smiling. Okay.
That's it.
Joint resolution with school committee relating to foundation level school support. Sally, I was going to have Dave read the resolution. Would you like to?
Want me to read it?
All right.
Want me to read it now?
Want him to read it now? Okay.
Okay. The Town of Tiverton Joint Resolution of the Tiverton Town Council and the Tiverton School Committee. Joint resolution supporting Representative Edwards and Representative Canario, House Bill 5082. Whereas the Town of Tiverton did have bond issues to build a new elementary school and place additions on 2 other elementary schools, and revocations and additions to high schools totaling over $34 million. And whereas the computation of the school housing aid ratio allowed for no less than 40% to projects approved by the Board of Regents prior to June 30, 2012, and whereas H5082 was introduced by Representative Edwards and Canario and relates to compensations of school housing aid ratio, and whereas H5082 will provide for the Town of Tiverton to be prospectively reimbursed in the 40% floor on the housing and aid share ratio on projects completed before June 30th, 2010, and now, therefore, be it resolved that the Town of Tiverton Town Council and the Tiverton School Departments respectively request the Rhode Island General Assembly to support H 5082. Be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution be forwarded to our local state representatives, John G. Edward, Dennis M. Canario, State Senators Walter S. Felag Jr., Louis P. De Palma, and Christopher Alterio, and Governor Gina Raimondo, requesting their support for passage of this bill, passed and approved this 23rd day of March 2015. Approved Denise Medeiros, Town Council President. Passed and approved this 25th day of March 2015. Approved Sally Black, Town School Committee Chair. Attested Nancy Mello, Town Clerk.
Okay, so the history of this is,
We changed.
yeah. So the history of this goes back to one night when I was watching them voting on the new buildings that were coming up to be built. And one of the towns got 80% reimbursement, and I understand that. But then another town got 40, and we got 30%, a little over 30%, because it's a wealth-based formula. So I said, if the floor's going to be 40 now for everybody, then Tiverton should go up to 40. So during the whole debate, I was texting Representative Edwards, what about Tiverton, what about Tiverton, because it was too late to put Tiverton in. This was a few years ago. So every year since then, I've gone up there with Mr. Fiore and anyone else who will come and testify. It won't hurt the state. We'll get back 268, a little more every year for 10 years, which would help us in our budget. It's not a lot for the state to give, but it would really help Tiverton, and it would be a matter of equity. So that's what we're going to go up and say. And we thought it would be better if it came from the school and the town together. And anyone else that will come will tell you when the date is. And he said, the more people in the room, of course. I promised him I wouldn't bring the chicken.
Thank you. I was going to make you promise if I was going.
All supporters, this will be a big help to, and the money will go to the town to pay for that, and that would be great. Thank you very much.
Do I need a vote to send this resolution? Yes. Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the joint resolution between the school committee relating to foundation level school support?
I'll make that motion to approve the joint resolution of the Tiverton Town Council and the Tiverton School Committee on House Bill H 5082.
Second. Maybe, and send it to
And send it to Representatives
Representative
Edwards and Representative Canario, and also to Walter, Senator Fiag, Senator Palmer, and Senator Christopher Alterio. And how about the Governor, Gina Raimondo?
Yes.
Senator Alden.
Have a second? Motion's been made in second. All those in favor? Against? Opposed? Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, Sally, for bringing this up. Bids and request for proposal. Recreation Commission requests council approval of kayak vendor to Osprey Sea Kayak Adventures, Inc. of West Park, Mass. Susan, do you want to come up, or? He just wants you to put on it.
Can I just ask a procedural question? Is this, we have, I'm fumbling a little bit, but are we able to approve a contract for something we currently don't allow? Because we have to change the ordinance to allow kayak rental, right, at the beach?
We have to change it for the peddler's license, but not for the kayak.
This is
already going on.
Oh, okay.
This
is rental, this isn't selling, I guess, I don't know, that's why I didn't know if it would fall under the peddler and hawker license, because it's...
Yeah, I don't know either, so.
It doesn't.
Yeah, so I thought we were going to have proposed a new fee at the fee hearing in April, attached to it. So that's hopefully what we're doing, is helping to drive people to Baldwin Beach this summer by having classes there during the week, and then weekends they would do rentals. Seems like a good organization.
Sounds like
It'll be
fun.
successful.
Do I have a motion?
I move that we approve the contract with Osprey, what is it?
Osprey Sea Kayak.
Osprey Sea Kayak. Adventures of West Coast.
Do I have a second? Any discussion? Motion's been made and second. All those in favor? Opposed? Unanimous. Thank you, sir. DPW Director Steve Bellucci. Recommendation, DPW Director to reject all bids for concrete crusher service due to lack of funds.
These are bids that went out prior to February and the blast we got. So these funds would all be redirected to the snow and ice budget and our overruns.
Okay.
Question? How much gravel do you have now in stock? Any of it?
We got a stockpile left to get us through the next construction season. And we'll just have to, double up next winter and grind up what we have
You
now.
have to purchase from outside.
We won't have to purchase from outside. No, we have a stockpile.
Thank you.
Take a motion. Reject all.
I move that we reject all bids or authorize the DPW Director to reject all bids for concrete crusher services.
Second.
Motion been made and second. All those in favor? Opposed? Open public forum for announcements, comments, and questions. Barbara Pelletier, Discover Tiverton.
Good evening. As you know, I've been pushing our wonderful town to try to make it a hub of tourism. And our governor actually is on the bandwagon of positioning Rhode Island and making the economy grow with tourism. And since we actually have no budget in town for that, so I've come up with these little projects. And this is one that it's two sides. It asks you to identify 15 sites in Tiverton. You can put the answers on the back, a couple of pertinent facts. They will be in restaurants and other locations in town. I'm trying to have them put on our website. And I think you can have a lot of fun trying to remember where they might be. At the end of May, the disclosure of where these locations are will be announced. I need 15 prizes, obviously. I'm trying to solicit any restaurant or anybody who wants to donate a prize as well as help defray the printing costs, because actually we only have a $100 tourism fund that Denise was kind enough to set up with money that was given to me by Tiverton Materials. So if anyone wants to contribute to that, you're most welcome. And I will be handing out these lists also where you can send the donation. It's tax deductible and all of that. So if you guys want some of these sheets.
You gotta give them to Nancy.
Okay.
I actually got about half of the pictures.
Did you?
So I had to cheat for the rest, you had to tell me.
You know, I saw a copy earlier this week.
I put the rough copy, and it was printed in town by Paul's Press, because I strongly believe we should support our own businesses, and that way, if you're going around town trying to identify these things, stop and eat and shop, and eventually, when the farm stands are open, you can always stop at a farm stand and really, I mean, if we pull together like, they always say snowflakes are very fragile, but we've seen that, gosh, if we all stick together, we can have Mr. Bellucci's worst nightmare. So,
I just have to
that's all I have to do.
It was a lot of fun while I was having lunch, and it was harder than I thought it would be, and I got all but one. One of them is almost impossible, so I give you
That's a
lot of
tricky
credit
one,
for
isn't
that.
it?
Yes, it is.
But I will put a box in town hall, so in case anybody mails them in or wants to bring them in, and we'll see how it goes. There are tons of pictures you can actually, I mean, it got to be a process of elimination, and all of these are very much in plain view, so I hope you have fun doing that, and that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara.
You're welcome.
Are you, did you sign up for public forum?
No, Madam President, I didn't.
Would you like to?
Yes.
All right. I'll let you.
Not to offer?
As long as Mr. Odell doesn't mind, you
no,
bump him
that's
for
fine.
just a minute. All right. Go ahead.
Madam President, members of the council, on behalf of the silent majority of the town of Tiverton, I would like to thank the council for having the guts to go forward and selecting new legal counsel for us, for the town, and we look forward to the guidance that the new counselors will be providing for the town. That's my comment. I have one question. In a past zoning board review episode, an opinion was given by the former council, and I don't expect an answer from you, but I would like you to consider whether or not you're going to accept that opinion, which was spontaneous, was not requested by the board, and was presented after the item in question had already been postponed. I think it was totally out of order and should be forgotten.
It is on the agenda on K1, and we are going to refer to the, Ms. Anthony.
And thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Jim Odell, Library's Budget Impact, informational.
Good evening, members of the council. I know that you're all aware that for many weeks I have been critical of the library impact on the budget for this fiscal year. And I also attended the workshop as well as the town council hearings when the OLIS representative came and over again told the town that reimbursement is in the following fiscal state's budget. I would like to let you know that I went beyond arguing and speaking to local officials. I went to the state today. This afternoon, speaking to the director of OLIS, and she informed me, as well as directed me, to the OLIS budget for the next 2 fiscal years, where it shows specifically that 16 cities and towns in Rhode Island will be receiving OLIS reimbursement for library construction projects this year. Tiverton will not. So, and I have copies of that if members of the council would like them. Also, in the protocol for construction settlement for the Rhode Island OLIS, it states in 3 paragraphs the protocol, the first of which is once the town's completed the project and receives its permanent certificate of occupancy, after that, the state's Department of Administration accountant audits the entire project, and after that, then OLIS reviews with the library and the town the revenue that will be received by reimbursement, and it says specifically, the following state fiscal year, which means, quite frankly, we are not getting a reimbursement this year. That was confirmed by the director of OLIS as well as by Rob Bromley at 4:30 this afternoon, who is at the state finance office. So I do have copies that show that we are not getting a reimbursement this year. I would like for the members of the council to have this copy for your own information. I'm further going to introduce it to the Budget Committee Thursday, as they are going to have to make $309,000 worth of further cuts to keep our budget the same as it's being related now.
Could you give that information to the town administrator also, so we can
Absolutely.
investigate that
Yep.
also? And,
I would also just like to state that Budget Committee member Laura Epke, 3 Budget Committee meetings ago, asked our administrator for a letter of confirmation that we were going to get reimbursement. That was 3 Budget Committee meetings ago, for the same reasons, because we're just not comfortable with it. We didn't believe it was going to happen. The oldest representative said it was not going to happen, and according to the paperwork that I have received today, it's not going to happen this year. We are scheduled to receive an estimated reimbursement from OLIS in fiscal year 16 of $407,046. Fiscal year 16. We're now working on budget for fiscal year 15.
15, 16.
Well, fiscal year 15 is what we're working on now, correct?
15, 16.
That's right.
You're talking 16.
So it's going
That's right,
into
and the one that we're scheduled to receive reimbursement for is year 16, 17.
That's 17.
Working on 16.
I thought you told me that it was November 2016 was that first reimbursement.
Excuse me?
I thought you said something about November earlier today.
No.
Okay.
No. Our first scheduled reimbursement is not going to happen this year, in this budget, in this year's state budget. The
In
one that has just been worked up by the state, we are not getting a reimbursement this year.
That'd be
We need a motion to put this
2016.
on the agenda for discussion.
Well, what I was going to do is refer that to the town administrator. We can't really discuss this
We've already
tonight.
been, that's why I'm asking.
Well, he has
No,
discussed
I've
it.
heard you two talk, that's what I'm saying, it's,
We just,
well, I mean, last
We just-
meeting, we were
we did not-
don't talk, and then I
well, we just
started
asked him to
So,
clarify the
yes.
date, but,
Yeah.
all right.
Well, what was said to me today by the director is that we are not getting a reimbursement in the fiscal year budget that we are working up right now.
Okay,
And Bob Bromley verified that at 4:30 today.
all right. Why don't you give that information to Nancy? We'll distribute it to, the town administrator really needs to look into this, to get this in writing, if you don't mind, Jim. I think we should get it in writing from the director. And, Joe, I'll put it on the next agenda.
No, I only wanted to say that I think we all knew the process was that the Budget Committee, that the House Finance, would have to approve an additional appropriation for us, so it is up to our elected representatives to get it in this year's budget. The budget's already been submitted, but it can be added into the budget. And that's kind of why, when I looked at this resolution we did to ask for more money for bond reimbursement, and then we're going to be asking for $309,000 for library payment, we're kind of asking our reps to go up and ask for quite a bit of money. So, I mean, I don't know we're going to get any of it, but,
Well, I think we should
So-
refer this to the town administrator.
and I'd like to clarify that what the procedure is going to be for the reimbursement. If we're reliant on a vote of the General Assembly,
Well,
I mean, I think we're sunk. There are $140 million already in the hole, according to the governor, so.
Well, I do have the completion and reimbursement phase, which is the state's
Yeah.
process, which says very simply, the Rhode Island Department of Administration accountant completes audit. This follows certificate of occupancy. After which time, the Office of Library and Informational Services consultants send reimbursement schedule to library, noting reimbursement begins in the following state fiscal year. The next paragraph reiterates, reimbursement begins in the following state fiscal year. It's never in the same year.
And that's what we heard at those.
And that's what we heard at those hearings as well. Both Mr. Souza, myself, as well as several other people, all asked that OLIS representative over and over again, just to make sure there was no misunderstanding. They all said, he said it every time, Reimbursement is always the following year. There isn't time to put it in their budget. It's never the same year. And I have that as well.
I think we've kind of discussed this to the point where we've gone a little overboard because it really isn't on the agenda. But what we'll do is we'll refer it to Matt.
Well, as I said, it was strictly for information, so you have it, because I'm going to...
And I appreciate it, and thank you for your work.
Relinquish mine. There aren't enough, so maybe...
Thank you for your work, Jim, and Mr. Walczyk, I'm sure you're going to clarify this. No yellow.
Sure.
Okay. All right. Council Town Administrator items and announcements, approval of resolutions for FTR, resolution to set aside a restricted account up to 25% of proceeds from the sale of lots in the Tiverton Industrial Park, resolution authorizing town council to sell or enter lease for municipal properties.
Since the general topic is items and announcements, and Administrator, let me go through a couple of things quickly. First of all, I appreciate Mr. Odell's research. What I'm going to drill down on, because I can comment, you can't.
Yes.
Is this fiscal year date, which it says fiscal 2016, which is what we're budgeting right now. And what our goal is, to the extent that we have control of anything, we control the pace with which our inspectors push us into compliance so that we get the CO this fiscal year, so that we would get through the audit process and be eligible for reimbursement the following fiscal year. But if someone is confused, whether it's the library board of trustees or anyone else, as to the schedule, we've got to get to the bottom of it, make sure the budget is an accurate representation of the actual flows to the town. But this doesn't help me, because it says fiscal 2016, and that's the budget we're going into. So I will look into it, because I know how things work at the state, and it wouldn't surprise me if they're 100 years behind. Here's one where they're 100 years behind, so I'll just put it out there. On March 20th, I'm going to put this on the town website too, because I think it's important. On March 20th, the Department of Environmental Management will hold an informational public meeting.
March 20th?
No, this was put out March 20th. I'm just drawing attention, this is a public document. This is a news release from DEM. On Tuesday, March 31st, at 4 p.m., in the lower level program room at the Newport Public Library, located at 300 Spring Street in Newport. Public meeting to discuss source water protection initiative for the Newport water system, drinking water reservoirs. The release goes on in some detail to discuss the fact that the water plants, Newport's water plants, both came online in 2014. And the DEM continues, I hate it when people read, but I think it's important, so I'll read it. Though the finished water has improved, the quality of the raw water that necessitated these improvements has not changed. The 9 source reservoirs, of which one is Nanquit Pond, are nutrient-enriched and experience frequent algal and cyanobacterial blooms, which impact aquatic life and reservoirs used for drinking water purposes. This is the important part. Protection of source waters is considered by the Department of Health as the front line of protecting public health and is essential to the long-term viability of Aquidneck Island's water supply. Just in case anyone has any doubt about the importance of the watershed protection overlay associated with Stafford Pond and Nanquit, that's why they were put in place. We have an island surrounded by salt water with lots of people on it. We're going to get them fresh water to drink, and they own these properties. And they try to maintain them as best they can. They're already pushing the envelope of what is technologically feasible and affordable to take their raw water source and bring it as clean water to the taps of their ratepayers. And so if you have any doubts about that, you can look into the science of it at the time and date that I announced. If you want to.
Just a quick, it strikes me, I thought you were going to come up with a correlation between the way DEM views Nanquit Pond and the way DEM views Stafford Pond, which would have been an interesting...
It's a very interesting counter-distinction.
Yes, it is, isn't it?
Yeah, and the councilman's point is, one is used extensively for recreation, and the other is strictly forbidden that recreation take place. And they both have the same fundamental profile, which are highly threatened public drinking water supplies. Part of the reality of the world we live in is that more and more people, we're not making any more water. So the places that we have that hold it, we have to take care of them. These two resolutions I put in front of you reflect the will of the council. A couple of weeks ago, we were talking about resolutions to go on the FDR ballot. And we've already put one through to deal with the sale of surplus property on Bridgeport Road. And these two kind of arose from that discussion. The first is to recognize that the proceeds from the sale of properties in the industrial park is an extraordinary event. In many communities, extraordinary revenues would find their way into capital funds. Here, we also have the added task in Tiverton of keeping the progress going. So once somebody buys a couple of lots and they give us some cash, we ought to be putting some of those resources back into the park so the rest of the park gets developed. One of the things that the administration always feels compromised on in any city or town is that if we have ambitions to go out and apply for grants, but we don't have any way of coming up with a match until after the fact, we put ourselves in a very reactive and difficult posture. So the thought here is we will probably sell a few properties in the near future. And at that point, we should try to put some of those proceeds aside so that we have matching funds, whether it's for roads or utilities or the engineering needed to do it. Now, I'm not entirely sure the impact, and Councilman Pelletier may help me here with the section number in the charter, whether the creation of a restricted account in this fashion is entirely clear that it's permissible. I certainly hope so, because even if it's not the law of the town, it should at least be the policy of the town that we're going to go forward in this fashion. But the council requested that I put this together, so this is the language I'm suggesting, and I'll let the council discuss what it would like to do on this one.
I could,
Tony, have you looked at this resolve also?
I have. I actually didn't see any problems with it. I'll double check again.
I mean, we do it anyway, in certain circumstances, although, no, we don't. That's an expense that's not expended, and then we roll it into another account. I mean, that's why we have an attorney. I'm not an attorney.
So while Tom is looking it up, I'll try to frame the question. Section 1214 of the town charter mandates that all of the revenues of the town, all of the fees, penalties, and miscellaneous revenues of the town, to be precise, must go to the general fund. And I think that's commonly understood in town to mean all revenues, because that word miscellaneous pretty much captures everything that's not. I'm not entirely sure that's the intent, really. I think that some time ago there may have been a thought that we didn't want beach fees just to be collected for the beaches, and we didn't want field fees to be just used for the fields. And we do that to protect bondholders, ultimately, so that there would never be any obstacle between the revenue of the town paying the general obligation debt of the town. It's a very conservative type of approach, and it's usually found in a lot of places. But in this particular instance, we're not budgeting this. This is an extraordinary event, and we're trying to develop the resource to make more money for the town in the future. It's a prudent policy, whether or not we can do it in resolve or leave the attorney to opine.
Well, the language is broad enough in section 1214 that would allow you to do this set aside. I rely on the fact that it says general funds of the town. This would be a general fund of the town, even though it's a set aside. You also have the ability to set aside for costs. This could be defined as costs later on if there's anything that has to be done to develop that, the industrial park. So it's not explicit, but I do think that the language is broad enough to allow you to take this step, and at least put it out to the FTR.
Here's the question I have, and this will really help me kind of understand our legal parameters. That answer makes me ask the question, is there anything that strictly prohibits those monies from being expended? And if not, then I think that answers our question. That it has to be deposited into the general fund, but then where it goes after that can be by the authority of some body. But if, and I don't know this, I don't know if there is an instance in the charter that says all expenditures must be approved, or, you know what I mean? Because there's a distinction between when the revenue comes in, and if at that point it goes into the general fund for distribution to some other fund, I mean, that solves the problem, at least for me, understanding it. That's not a question I expect an answer on right now.
Madam President, please. I think in this first round, we've discussed kind of where, we're talking about infrastructure, to make the park accessible, so, and I just think that information should somehow be included. Just to say it's going to go into a fund, I think is where people, well, what are we creating? There's a little, I think the information has to be provided, particularly if this first sale, goes through, and we know that there's infrastructure needs right away at the entrance of the park, so I think that information should somehow be relayed.
I think that's well, I'm just going to speak for myself in saying that I think that is where we have historically gotten ourselves into trouble by pigeonholing a resolution. We can certainly explain that at the hearing and make public as much backup information as possible, but you don't want to say, we're going to use it to build an entrance, and then you don't need the entrance because it gets covered from a grant or something else, and now you can't, and now you're stuck with...
My only thought is that all right, as a sidebar.
At the hearing,
we should.
During the hearing, we can, all right, others up there can explain why we're looking into it now. But I agree with Brett, you can't be specific.
I understand, and like you said, but I just want to make sure that people understand what's going on and fully informed, I know we make a lot of these decisions in the back room, and as much as we can make public, I think we should.
And it will. Eventually.
It might not even be a bad idea for our resolutions, for Matt's, I mean, I presume they're going to be council resolutions.
Yes.
But they're really the administrator's resolutions, to have a paragraph that goes along with each of these, because I know we answer questions at the hearing, but it might be nice for people that just pick up the packet and attach to each one of these resolutions as a footnote that brings you back to a little one-paragraph blurb of why we're doing this.
And
I'd agree.
That's what you're talking about. Okay.
Madam President, if I can add a note. At our last meeting, I made some comment about being on North Main Road in Fall River, following my wife's advice, I'm going to blame her, and turning onto a road that brought me into the industrial park in Fall River. And I indicated at that time that I was absolutely amazed at what is going on there. And I would welcome anybody, I would urge anybody to go to the industrial park off of Route 24 and see what Fall River is doing as far as our competition is concerned. Apparently, I wasn't the only one amazed. If you can get a copy of the Providence Journal for today, there's a lead article that starts on the first page and I think goes to page 7. Discussing the Fall River Industrial Park and why they were able to attract the Amazon distribution center. It clearly pointed out that Rhode Island is simply not competitive. It pointed out that Rhode Island never had an opportunity, never had a chance of getting that project here into any industrial site in Rhode Island. And a lot of it had to do with the infrastructure that you can find in Fall River and the pad-ready sites that you find in Fall River. If you want an idea as to why a resolution like this is important in developing the industrial park, simply read that article, and simply attaching that article, I think, to our resolution would explain to anybody why we need some sort of development and some sort of fund like this to make our situation competitive with Fall River.
Do I have a motion to approve this resolution?
I move that we approve the resolution for the FTR to set aside a restricted account of up to 25% of the proceeds from the sale of lots or parcels or the entire park in Tiverton Industrial Park, as drafted.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Who would the administrator put the little side note on? Can we rely on him for that?
Yep.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and second. All those in favor? Opposed? Unanimous.
Excuse me, ma'am. Are you saying a side caption on the docket?
No.
No, I'm saying at the FTA.
I don't understand, Mr.
What I recommended, and I'll explain it because I recommended it, was when we have all of this, the mounds and mounds and mounds of paper that we print out for the financial town hearing, in one of those piles, I'm not sure it matters which one, having some backup to the resolutions. If there is just a sheet we want to print of all of the resolutions that is separate from the docket, but looks just like the page in the docket with asterisks or footnotes that relate to a paragraph that Matt's going to write on this, paragraph that, and maybe a paragraph that we write for our resolutions, and invite the budget committee to do same. And then we have at least answered some questions for people who weren't able to ask questions at the hearing. We all know how well attended the hearing is, and so.
I think we'd help the media too to promote, explain some of them.
Next one, Matt.
The next one was prepared mostly at the request of Councilman Pelletier, but I agree with it, which is give as has been done in the past, but I believe too long ago, authorization to the council to sell any number of town properties. I think the last time we did this, it's probably more than 5 years ago. If you read the charter carefully, authorization from the voters lasts for 5 years. But I think just to be on the safe side, ask the voters to look at it again and include the properties that are listed: Essex Public Library, Tiverton Police Station, Public Works Garage, and any one of the 3 fire stations. This leaves our options open for the next 5 years as we look at configuring town services in a way that's effective and efficient. The most pressing matter being Essex, but it might not be the only one that we have to deal with.
Any questions?
I had a question on has a new solicitor been made aware of the situation with the Essex Library? And
I don't believe we've
so
spoken.
it'd be something I think that Matt would have to bring him up to speed on at some point. With no...
No.
No, you have it.
All I have to do is say something in Latin.
Matt's been meeting with him, bringing him up to date.
I'm just
Matt and I
hoping
both
at some
met with him
point we
today.
could maybe move that off and find out if we actually do have the ability to.
Okay. All right, what are we, any other discussion about this resolution? Any question?
I still don't understand why we would want to sell these other buildings, but I just,
Well, it's
I'll leave it alone, because at least it's what I...
Councilman, this is how my mind works. Whatever you want to close, I want to sell. That's pretty much how it works with me.
Yeah, Public Works Garage, we're going to put the guys,
But just, I have to constantly remind people of where we are with the budget.
Yeah.
Look at what we're doing. We're tapping into our stockpiles of gravel. We're tapping into reserves we set aside to cover health insurance costs. We're sacrificing capital projects. We're starting to make the kind of budget moves that a community with a lot of municipal tightness is going to make. And so we don't have the luxury of leaving assets unutilized. So if they're going to sit there closed up, we need to find a way to liquidate them so that to the benefit of the taxpayers of the town for the things they really need.
You've basically named all the
Except the senior center.
Yeah.
The senior center and town hall, I just don't see. to be honest.
We don't want to upset our seniors, because we really need that senior center.
I don't think we're going to be selling the police station at any time soon.
That's why I didn't understand.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a step in the right direction.
I'm saying, if somebody walked in today and said, those parcels are necessary for what I want to do in an industrial park, will you do a swap with me? We'd be stuck without a resolution, so I would just...
I see what you're saying, yeah.
I mean, ultimately, what prompted this was not having the flexibility to make any advances on that parcel off Highland here, off of Bridgeport Road, or on Bridgeport Road. And it got me thinking, the town of Tiverton own a considerable amount of parcels here's and there's, so to speak, lots of little pieces of land all over the place. Some of them are productive, some of them are not productive. Ultimately, it would increase the flexibility of this body to transact those parcels. I know they're not specifically enumerated, and I don't know if there is a way that we could get that through an FTR without kind of just giving us carte blanche to sell whatever we wanted. There's a practical implication there, but it would give additional flexibility, and once we start actively looking at what these parcels are, I think that might be a necessity.
This will be another one that needs to note underneath, I think.
Well, it does, there's no interest has been expressed in these properties at this time.
Well, this is very similar to the resolution we had for a few, 4 or 5 years about, and it included the town hall and the senior center and the Barker School and
Any further questions, discussion? Entertain a motion?
I move that we approve the resolution for the FTR ballot authorizing the town council to sell or enter into a long-term lease for municipal properties as drafted.
Second.
I guess I'd forward that to the budget committee.
Motion's been made in second. All those in favor? Opposed? It's the Board of Canvassers.
Board of Canvassers, I'm sorry.
Not the Budget Committee. Council announcements, comments, and questions.
I had just one short thing. On January 22nd, we received a report from the town administrator. It was a building improvement needs report. And at the time, we were told this was a partial report. I don't know if anything has progressed on this. My only question was this: if there were dollar amounts attached to these, would it help us in what we had discussed the other day with the litigation issues? So I thought that one of the attorneys had said that having a good, well-thought-out list of things needs in the town would help us if we were to go to arbitration.
Oh, you're correct.
So we already have a list, but there are no dollar amounts, and I'm sure there are more, so I'm wondering if we could try to pick away at this a little more to add it to our...
You're absolutely right, because I think that number might stagger some people.
Well, that was my only thought. So we had the list started. I was hoping that we're continuing along that road and maybe getting some bids or, some estimates on this stuff.
I will admit there's one item on that list that, in my spendthrift ways, I've decided to tend to. As I stood in the building official's office the other day, and I could see outside, I could see through doors.
Yeah.
I feel like in the Sixth Sense, I see dead people, I see them outside. And so I asked the maintenance guys to please replace that door, so that we're not heating it outside. I just think it's ridiculous. And I'm an employee sitting next to an open door.
I understand where I'm going with this. I just think that we need to have all our ducks in order, just in case, so
Sure.
Anyone else, councilors? Okay, Kim, town solicitor items and announcements. I'm going to go through this because we went through it in the office today with Attorney DeSisto and Matt. Number one, the memorandum regarding application of Four Corners Property LLC, March 4th, 2015, zoning board meeting, environmental review statements, thresholds for special permit uses located in the watershed protection overlay district, including copy of ordinance Article 8. That will be referred to Attorney DeSisto for his review and opinion on that. This is all things that Attorney Teitz was planning on discussing with us. Memorandum regarding Tiverton open space and land Commission Open Meetings Act requirements for site visits. This was a question that he was answering when he did the ethical lecture that he gave us, and this will be accepted and filed. Memorandum regarding Tiverton Harbor and Coastal Water Management Commission, Ethics Commission, financial disclosure. This was same as number 2. He lost an opinion on it. He's wrote his opinion. That will be accepted and filed. Revised Peddler's Hawkins proposed ordinance amendment, language revised per direction of town council, scheduled for public hearing April 13th. We have the revised proposal in our packet, and that will also be referred to Attorney DeSisto for his review to see if there's any changes he would like to make. Amendment to ordinance and recommendations. Amendment to ordinance chapter 30, clause article 2 regarding municipal court regulations, scheduled public hearing April 27th. That has also been referred to Attorney DeSisto, and we need to vote for approval of that public hearing. And that came out of the loopy, right?
Yes.
Okay. But I'm calling it loopy too, so. All right, so I need a motion to schedule a public hearing for the amendment to the ordinance, chapter 30, courts, article 2.
So moved.
Second.
Motion been made in second. All those in favor? For just that one. For amendment to ordinance chapter 30. That came out of the loopy. It's in the packet.
April 27th, right?
April 27th.
If we voted, we pause for discussion.
You pause for discussion. Jones, wait a minute. That was my pause.
I got confused as to what this was doing, and not being familiar with what the other committee proposed. I think it leaves a gap in that, I think this is trying to deal with the municipal court judge, and if he's unable to preside and what the procedure is, and I gather that that's what this is referring to.
Not really. It cleans up a couple of those kind of things, but, Matt's, what we were trying to do is reclassify the way we deal with land use violations. And then this is the conversation of, do you acknowledge a land use violation or a zoning violation or a building permit violation as a criminal offense or a civic offense? Because that has a direct impact on where this appeal goes, where the next step is, and how we fight this in court, or where we fight it in court.
Right, that's in a nutshell. So,
And we're trying to say, I'm sorry, go ahead.
presently, when we take a case in municipal court on a zoning violation, it is treated as a criminal matter. And there are a number of procedural benefits that attach to the defendant, because, first of all, we have reason about certain process serving requirements. And it also triggers sort of an open question as to whether or not the individual is entitled to defense. It's an unresolved question, but it could go to the direction where somebody would be entitled to a defense. And so you ask yourself the fundamental question, what is the purpose of enforcing the zoning code? Is it to get compliance, or is it to punish? And the recommendation of the WUPI, of the Land Use Procedures Improvement Committee, is that we aim for compliance. Land is forever, so protect the land in your land use decisions. And you may still have recourse if somebody's willful, and, there's awful things that happen. But for the most part, what we wanted was for the Superior Court, when it gets an appeal from our municipal court, to have no doubt as to what the will of the town is, that the matter should be a civil matter, and that it's not guilt or innocence, it's a preponderance of the evidence. And it changes our threshold of burden of proof. I'm going to defer to the new solicitor. I felt this was work well done by our litigator, Gina DeCenzo, who put this together. It was recommended to the judge for his review. He gave it a once over, he had some suggested edits, and then the second time through he says, looks okay to me. And that being the case, I would hope that we could have a public hearing and really explain it in a lot more detail. But it's on, we have to do that. It's posted for here.
The other benefit to crafting some additional language in this amendment is, or modification, is to set a sort of a rule or a clear path for an individual who would be subject to these regulations. If you have, if you're in municipal court for a land use violation, here are some expectations, and here's most of these people, I guess, that we come across don't have a ton of legal support. They're dimensional violations, they're building violations, and things like that. And so part of this conversation is kind of rules of procedure. What are the expectations when you go into municipal court? What can you expect? And what's a reasonable outcome? Or what's the expectation of you as a defendant? So that's the added benefit.
Is that clear, Joe?
Yes, that's clear. Thank you.
So I have a motion on the floor and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Unanimous. Thank you.
Do you need a motion to refer these items, or is that just?
Well, it was already, we talked about it, we didn't feel we did, it was already at the attorney level.
That's fine.
Town clerk items and announcements. Nancy?
I just want to make note that the financial town referendum will be coming on May 16th. We have begun our advertising. This week, there will be 2 ads in these current times, and one is for the absentee ballot applications. If you need a mail ballot for the absentee voting, and it also stipulates the dates and the time that we'll have absentee voting here at the town hall, as well as the last day to register if you want to vote for the financial town, at the financial town referendum, is going to be on Thursday, April 16th. So you must be registered by that date if you want to vote at the FTR. These advertisements are up on the website, or will be put up there tomorrow. They will be in the newspaper this week, and we will continually keep putting them in the newspaper and try to get it out as much as we can.
And the FTR hearing is April 30th.
The FTR hearing is scheduled for April 30th.
At the middle school this year, like we did last time?
We always hold it at the middle school, yes.
And that should probably be on our website too, so.
There's a bullet on the homepage of the website, and we are just starting to, including with the application for your absentee mail ballot, and that'll be on there too if you want to just print that copy of that out as well.
Participation was very poor last year, and I think it's really important that people come and listen this year, especially considering the vote last year.
They should, because I have to say, even with these resolutions, it's going to be lengthy on that ballot. Remember, a ballot is a small column, you're going to be taking quite a bit on that, and it's difficult to just read it all when you're in a little privacy booth taking the vote. You should be made aware of these ahead of time, you should do your homework. But we'll do what we can to keep putting it out, that's all I have.
Mr. Lambert, I'd like for the record to say it's 9:40 and we're going into executive session. We should all be very proud of ourselves.
I move that we go into closed executive session pursuant to Rhode Island General Law, Section 4246585, rate disposition of real property, industrial property.
Second?
At this point, I'd like to do a roll call to go into executive session. Mr. Souza? Yes or no?
Yes.
Mr. Perry? Yes. Mr. Lambert?
Yes.
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 Mr. Shabbat?
Yes.
Next.
And state in closed executive session pursuant to Rhode Island General Law, Section 4246582, report from Solicitor DeSisto, Ray, citizen of Cranston, police officers versus Lincoln D. Chafee in his capacity as governor of the state of Rhode Island, pension litigation.
Second?
Yes.
Mr. Souza? Mr. Perry? Councilor Mello? Councilor Lambert?
Yes.
Councilor DiMederos, yes. Councilor Shabbat?
Yes.
Councilor Pelletier, yes. We're now in executive session. Attorney